Well, hey again, everybody. This is Dan Gingiss live with you on the Experience Maker Show for episode 20. I can't believe that we are already at episode 20, but that means we've been doing this for 5 months already. As you know, I'm Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker, coach, author, and podcaster. And I'm here every week to speak with people who are experience makers in their business so that we can all learn from them and hopefully apply something new to our business. So I'm very excited today to introduce you to Cameron Weeks. Cameron is the co-founder and chief executive officer of a really amazing customer experience, customer service company called Edify Labs. And we'll talk about that in a second, but let's welcome Cameron to the show. How you doing, man?
Hey, how are you?
I am doing great. I've been looking forward to this conversation ever since the last time you and I talked, which was now quite a few months ago. Not much in the world has changed since then, huh?
Yeah, we weren't, at a conference and traveling around the world together at all. We were an entirely different world.
Exactly. I have to say I miss those days, but I think we'll be back there at some point as long as we're patient.
I think I've set a new life record for amount of time not on an airplane, even as a child. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, it is definitely bizarre to be sitting in one place and not moving around for those of us that are used to traveling. So for those that don't know you or Edify, give us the quick background.
Sure. So we built Edify to really kind of bridge the gap from what is available in our personal lives when connecting with friends and family members to work through problems, to make those same tools available to us to connect to major brands and enterprises. We think it shouldn't be any harder than calling your mother, than calling a company that you've bought a piece of technology or a piece of software from. And the same tools and abilities that you have to connect with your friends and family should be the exact same tools you have when connecting with a brand, regardless of its size or location in the world. And from what we found, it's not that brands don't want to make it easy to engage with customers. It's that the vendors that they have to purchase from just really made this difficult and really made it nearly impossible to do. So we're bringing technology that we take for granted in our personal lives all the way to the enterprise of the market and making it super easy for everyone to leverage and use no matter where they are in the world.
So let's talk broadly here. Do you think technology drives customer experience, or does customer experience drive technology?
Well, this becomes a bit of an opinionated position for me. I would argue for the last 20 years, no one's been driving. And the car has just been, the steering wheel's been tied to the side of the door and we've been driving in a circle, going nowhere. But I think that in a perfect world, customer experience would drive technology, and that we're following what the customers and people. We don't even have to call them. We have a tagline here at Edify that I really enjoy a lot. It's called "We're Customers Too." And the idea is that we try to, sometimes I think in our world, in these conversations, we like define this thing as this customer over here, and we're always dealing with it, positive or negative, but it's always a thing we got to deal with. And that's not really the reality. I buy things, you buy things, we both need help when we buy things. Like this is us we're talking about. This isn't some like foreign thing. It's like, how do we want to run the world? How do we want to solve problems? How do we want to collaborate? How do we want to set expectations for things? So because of that, then I think the power needs to be with the customer. It needs to be with us. It needs to be with the company. It does not need to be in the hands of 20-plus-year-old technology companies.
That's a great point. And, I've been saying that not only is it important for people to be customers of their own company, and clearly your customers anyway, as you say, your consumers in your lives. But I would say now more than ever, we are all experiencing the same thing together. So one of the things I've been saying is, if you can't show empathy right now, I don't hold out a lot of hope that you can show it anytime else.
You're probably not going to figure it out.
Yeah, because we know how our customers are feeling right now, because we're going through the same exact thing. And sometimes I also thought this about marketing too, but I definitely think it about customer experience. Sometimes we make it too complicated, and it really is just about getting into the shoes of the customer and understanding what they're going through and trying to make it easy easier on them, because that's what we demand when we're consumers as well. So I love that.
Yeah, I always have to give we talk about these kind of things a lot. And, I used to be quick to blame the company for also making it too difficult, for not, walking a day in the shoes of the customer and doing their own journey mapping and experiencing it. Over the last handful of years, though, as we've dove deeper into this and really kind of examined what is the problem, because obviously that problem is really important to us. Is this a problem with our customers not really using the technology available? Is it an operational? Is it a technology issue? What is the core problem? And the more we dove into it, what we actually found the problem to be was really, like, truly the tools available to the people on the front lines trying to do this work just don't exist. If you cut through the marketing hype of all of the features that are supposedly available, it's all nonsense. And the tools really don't exist to empower these people to be successful, and they're desperate for them. They want to make people's experiences better. They want to make this easier. And so we have to find a way to bridge that gap. We have to solve this technology problem that is really holding this entire multi-billion-dollar public industry back from actually doing what it wants to.
So give me an example of that. Give me an example of a tool that didn't exist for the agent.
Yeah, easiest example that we can all relate to, Omnichannel. Omnichannel is the biggest bag of hot air in this industry. I'm a fan of the iPhone. Maybe you're an Android person, I don't know.
Nope.
But I've never bought an Omnichannel mobile phone, right? But I sure as heck wouldn't pay Apple $1,000 for this thing if it couldn't do a phone call and send text messages at the same time, right? And now that's $1,000. The average contact center deployment is what? $500,000, $1 million bucks? And we're paying that, and it can't do a phone call and a text message at the exact same time. But for $1,000, everybody has one in their pocket. Like, I think that's the easiest way to really visualize, like, exactly what we're talking about here. That you and I could be talking on the phone like we are right now, and I could text you a link to something. Or I could put it in the side chat. This app we're using right here even has a chat embedded while doing video and audio. I mean, these are just things we take for granted in every part of our life, but they're not a part of enterprise customer service. And it's not because people don't want these things.
That's fascinating, not to mention the fact that we can see comments from people who are watching right now, other parties. So Chris Straub, Scotty Warner, thanks for joining in and commenting. For anybody that's watching on LinkedIn or Periscope, we're taking your questions live. I'll go for a little while with Cameron, but we hope to answer your questions as well. So Cameron, I was looking at your website earlier, and I'm going to pull it up here real quick. And I noticed that in the product overview, there were 3 different groups of kind of connections that you talked about. And I wanted you to walk us through each of them. So first, there was the connecting businesses with customers, which I think is the part that you just explained, no?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. And so then we get to connecting employees with each other. So help us out with that.
Yeah, and to take a step back and kind of give a frame for, or a title for, kind of all 3 of these ideas, the theme of Edify is to really kind of charge down this new idea of not CCaaS or contact center as a platform, or UC, which is like your internal PBX, extension dialing type stuff, but to pull these things together. And that's really where the value can be unlocked. And so to do that, we created a new category, which we call BCaaS, or Business Communication as a Service. And the idea here is that these things shouldn't be siloed. The contact center shouldn't sit over on this island, completely separated and isolated away from the rest of the organization. If we do that, we're set up to fail. And the general business communication tool shouldn't, again, be isolated from the contact center. So the dream that we had when we built this platform was that, what if a customer could call into the contact center with a problem? Someone says, I have an issue with this thing. And the agent who answers, maybe it's a real technical issue. And so maybe the agent who answers isn't potentially capable of answering that very detailed technical problem, or isn't the best suited person for it. But to have the best possible experience for the customer, the best thing the agent could do would be reach across the enterprise and pull a product manager from a different department in the company live into the conversation with the customer. Like, what better experience could you possibly have? And how would you feel as a customer if that happened to you all in real time? Well, when we start bringing the workforce together, both the contact center, the general workforce, and putting them all on the same piece of technology, we're at least bridging that technological gap. And now that is completely in the realm of possibility. Clearly, there's other operational issues to work out and to make decisions on, but we're at least removing that hindrance of the technology not allowing these people to just be in the same place.
That's awesome. I mean, it actually reminds me of my first job out of college. I worked for a collectibles company called Danbury Mint, and we sold high-end plates, dolls, figurines, sports paraphernalia, classic car replicas, etc. And I was on the marketing team, and my job was to create and execute marketing plans to sell these products. And during the holidays, they would often grab marketing folks to handle the phones in the call center, even though we had zero training, but they had to do it because they just needed
it's easy, right? Just pick up the phone.
Yeah, and so there's two things I remember. I mean, the first, they're related to the same call, is I got a call and a woman was talking about one of my products. And so, I mean, I'm thinking about it as you're saying, like, what if you could talk to the product manager? Well, there I was. I happened to be the one that answered the phone. She happened to be calling about one of my products. That was super fun for me. And so I, chatted her ear off about it. It was a fantastic conversation. Made the sale. I hung up. I'm thinking, man, I am good at this. And I get a tap on my shoulder. This is part two. And it's the head of the contact center. And I looked up, I said, wasn't that good? I got the sales. She said, well, we're trying to keep our calls below, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 minutes. You were on for 15. I'm like, but it was such a great conversation. But I think that's totally right. I mean, if you could actually talk to the person, who has the answer. And I love any technology. I always get asked about bots and AI, and my answer is always I'm much more for that technology being used to help agents become better than to try to help replace agents. Anything that helps an agent become better is going to end up, in my opinion, a better customer experience, because certainly right now, even more so, but in general, we still want to communicate with humans. That is still part of our personality.
The most ironic thing, I think, for me in this entire industry is the whole industry is based on the idea of asking and answering questions. Right? That's what a call center does. However, when we go to service a call center or manage a call center, we do very little question asking ever. And so instead, we build features that don't solve the problems of the contact center at any stretch of the imagination. So for chatbots, as a great example you just pulled up, we wanted a way to, I guess the theory of this was we wanted a way to make conversations more efficient in the call center. And so we wanted to reduce human activity and do something that was more scalable. And so someone comes along and pitches this idea of chatbots, and we don't need humans for them. And what no one really stops to say, like, what problem will this create? What issues are we going to have happen here? We just steamroll forward with this plan. And so what ended up actually happening as a result of pushing chatbots so aggressively was that we took a issue that was already growing in size inside the contact center, and we wildly compounded it. Attrition has always been one of the #1 issues in almost every contact center in the world. And if you dive back even deeper on what causes attrition, it's really around coaching and training and educating a workforce to be able to solve a customer's problem and find empowerment and success there. And so, long story short here, what we did with chatbots was we ripped out all of the really easy questions that agents could actually answer and find success in on a reoccurring basis throughout the day. And we left the really complicated, hard problems that we didn't have training for. And we left them because we didn't have training for the agent to answer the questions, which means we didn't have training to train the bot on how to answer the question. And so we took an issue that we were trying to solve for, which was make agents more efficient and be able to scale the team better. And we had the exact opposite effect at a macro scale across customer service. So employing machine learning and chatbots for your customers is not a bad idea, but it's not the first thing you should do. We have to first focus on empowering the team, empowering the agents, empowering our workforce to be successful. And machine learning can have a huge impact there. And then when we're successful with that, then we can go and look at how do we enhance our customer experiences and find automation there.
Well, and I love that your headline here says connecting bots and humans, which to me is exactly the answer, right? any company that's starting off with the concept of, hey, let's bring in a bot so we can save some money and close down our call center is really missing the long-term play, right? They're getting excited about the shiny object in the technology, and they're missing the big play. And I do think that connecting bots and humans is exactly what has to happen for the most efficiency. And I always imagine the agent sitting next to, this black box, whether it's Watson or whatever it is, that can beat anybody at Jeopardy and knows the answer to every question ever. Think about how smart that agent now feels, right? And how confident they feel because they know that they're not going to have to be searching for an answer or calling anybody, right? Because the answer's right there. And so now they can just focus on doing what I think the computer can't do, which is have a human interaction with another human. And that to me is something that's so desired.
As consumers, we so often remember and think about the fact that we contact somewhere and we get frustrated that the person doesn't know the answer. And sometimes we even get frustrated with that person. And if we take a step back and look at the situation, it's very likely very much not that person's fault. It's the company's fault. It's the management's fault around that person. From our research, the people who are actually working inside contact centers love helping people solve problems, and they're very, very good at it traditionally. It's that when they're not empowered to be able to answer the question, they're not given the data, they don't have access to the information, no one wrote it down. That's where things fall apart. And so we put these people on the front line and you just kind of tell them to figure it out a lot of times. And we don't properly support them. And that really has to change if we're actually going to have an impact on customer experience. That there's not going to be any fancy new feature that we build that's on its own if it's not for the purpose of helping agents become more successful.
Fair enough. So obviously, contact centers around the world have had to completely change their operations and become almost entirely remote. And everybody's trying to figure out this new normal thing in real time. So how has that affected what you guys do? And what are you hearing from your clients in terms of what's really working?
Yeah, the Edify solution from a very technical standpoint was really well suited for this. So your cloud's been a marketing word now for way too long. But unfortunately, a lot of times it's more of a marketing phrase than actually an architectural one. And so with Edify, we actually mean that it's a cloud native architecture. And to kind of dive in that deeper, the Edify platform itself lives in 37 regions around the world. And we use the word region purposefully in that it's not a single data center. Every region for us actually has at least 2 to 3 data centers operating inside of it. So if we blow that up, that's like 75 plus different data centers for us globally. The more important thing than just the number of facilities is the fact that all of our regions, all of our data centers are sharing information in real time. So in less than 100 milliseconds, we're able to distribute data out to all of our regions, no matter where they physically are in the world. Now, why this really matters for this topic that you brought up is the issue inside of voice-based call centers is call quality and latency and packet loss and all of the stuff that goes into making a phone call be effective, across the public internet connection. When we're in a physical building, these things are still important, but there's lots of things IT can do to protect and secure the conversation, right? When we kind of take away that corporate infrastructure and when everyone goes home, there's all kinds of chaos that happens. And so because of Edify's architecture and because it's wildly different from everyone else's in the market that really does nowhere near the scale, we're able to get much, much closer to that end user, even if they're at their home, which means that we can have a much, much higher quality of connection and nearly have a guaranteed call quality even on public internet connections and residential internet lines. And so the outcome of this is that customers had an incredibly good experience, even at a global scale. Customers in the Philippines, throughout South Korea and Australia, everyone went home. It wasn't the US that went home. The whole world shut down. And so we're not talking about managing call quality here in the States from Indiana to Ohio. We're talking about doing this throughout Europe, throughout Asia, all around the world. And it's because of that platform and the way the architecture works for us that this just wasn't even a thing we even talked about or considered. It occurred and no one had to think twice about it.
That's awesome. Sometimes you're in the right place at the right time, and as it turns out, I think that this was much needed technology right now. So Scotty Werner, who is one of our most loyal watchers, thank you for being here every week, Scotty. Appreciate it. He writes in, how does your company help an agent build a relationship with the customer instead of only completing a transaction?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Um, I think there's lots of ways you can address this. One of my favorite is around the journey mapping part of the tool. And so with the journey tool, this isn't just to predefine how a customer comes into the contact center, how they get connected with an agent. It's also around the idea of exposing an entire customer lifecycle to the agent in real time. And so, Dan, if I were to call in and you were to be the person that answers the phone, how cool would it be for you if you were able to see my entire order history over the last 2 years? And here's the products that I've bought. Here's the pages of products that I've looked at. Here's my general interest profile for the organization, and get you up to speed very quickly on that. I have some really cool ideas that I'm working with customers to implement on how we actually can start using that metadata about a customer from a routing standpoint. Obviously, this throws kind of a wrench into the workforce management world, but from a customer experience side, I think it's really, really cool that we actually could start matching similarities of customers with similarities of agents, and reinforcing that personal connection between people. We definitely, by this point in time, in a technology perspective, have the ability to do that from a data and processing standpoint. And so now how do we operationalize that and work that into the mix? But I think there's lots of really cool ways that we can move people from a transaction and into something that's a relationship, which obviously, as we all know, has a lasting impact on the customer's relationship with that company then going forward.
That's such a cool idea if you can capture the data from your agents as well, and especially if they're willing to provide it. But I could see you, when they get hired, filling out some sort of a, personality or lifestyle form, and even just knowing, are you a cat lover, a dog lover, and being able to match it.
I'm a dog person.
Actually, so if I grew up a dog person, became a cat person, and just got a dog, so now I have one of each. So
oh my gosh,
I guess I am. I don't know what we call that, but we'll call it multi-pet to not offend anybody.
A blended family.
Exactly. So that's really cool, and I never really thought about using the. I always talk about the human aspect of working with an agent, but then using their sort of human uniqueness to an advantage of being able to connect them maybe with somebody they can relate to more. I would imagine this also might work. I was talking with somebody earlier today about how there's so many generations in working in the workplace now, especially in call centers, and it might work, for example, to have a baby boomer talk to a baby boomer and a millennial talk to a millennial, just so they actually can communicate better with each other. What do you think of that?
I mean, the realm of possibilities is really open there. I think it's an untapped opportunity for rethinking how we make decisions. And I think the start of that is getting to a platform again that really unlocks that ability. If we're still tied to a box of metal down the hall, our ability to do integrations and do really cool stuff, gets a bit limited. Once we actually reach the cloud and have access to all of the data that exists in the cloud, then we get to really do some cool stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. So obviously, some of us, it's hard to predict where we're going to be in a month at this point. But let's assume a post-COVID-19 world where hopefully we have some sort of a solution where we don't have to worry about it anymore, whether it's a vaccine or something else. What do you see happening next in your space, and what are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, I think this was something we had talked about, years ago. This idea of really leveraging machine learning inside the company versus externally, and we've talked about it here as well. I've seen that trend dramatically increase over the last 6 months, and even in the last couple of months, actually, even more. And so I think that idea is really catching on, and people are really looking at how do we use these tools to really empower and make the team internally more effective and efficient. So I think we're going to see a lot more conversations around that. I think we're going to see a lot more tools come out around that, of just how do we empower the people who are on the front lines doing this, who are actually responsible for the customer experience. How do we make their lives more successful? I think we're going to have a lot more come out around that in the next few months.
That's awesome. I just have to post a funny post here in response to the last thing that you mentioned. I never thought the Discover Card ads could be a reality. Talk to someone like you, and obviously having been a Discover Card employee for almost 10 years, I appreciate that. Thank you, TM Tweet Chat. That is it's hilarious. Well, believe it or not, Cameron.
Well said.
This is one of the fastest half an hours on the entire internet, and every time I look down at my clock and realize it's been 30 minutes, I'm shocked. But particularly today, thank you so much for being here, and I think your technology is really, really cool, which is why I wanted to have you here. And keep doing what you're doing, because you are connecting people to people, and I think making the whole interaction from both a customer and an agent perspective a lot easier.
Thank you so much. And this was a fantastic conversation. Went by super fast. I look forward to when we can get back together and share another cocktail.
All right, looking forward to it. That is Cameron
Bye-bye.
Weeks. He is the co-founder and CEO of Edify Labs. You can check them out at www.edify.cx. And next week, we are going to have another special guest, as we do each and every week. We're going to have Brian Wallace on. Brian is the founder of a company called Now Sourcing. He is on the advisory board of South by Southwest, and he is a Google small business advisor and a really smart and interesting guy. I am going to do the best that I can to just keep my lips sealed and take notes during this conversation next week. But that will be episode 21. This is Dan Gingiss for The Experience Maker. Thank you so much again for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you next week.